Good morning and welcome to Talking Cafe Live. My name is Lucy and I am one of the community agents at the Community Council for Somerset. I'm really excited to be joined this morning by Councillor Ross Henley, as you can see on the screen. Welcome, Ross.
Hi everybody. Hi Lucy. Nice to see everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So I can see that we've got some people jumping on. So in the top of my screen, I can see those that are joining. So we'll give it a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Hi, Hazel.
What a wonderful weather we're having down in Somerset today as well.
I know, yeah. It's thankfully we're doing it inside.
Yeah, autumn is truly with us. I do love all the autumn colours, but the rain less so.
Yeah, me too. I like the rain when you're inside with a fire and nice and warm, and you can just watch and hear it.
Yes, it's lovely, isn't it? It's a lovely time of year.
Yeah, so we've got people jumping on. Morning, Debbie. Ross, perhaps you could introduce yourself to those people that are watching.
Okay, morning everybody. Thank you for logging in this morning. Okay, my name is Ross Henley and I'm a district councillor for the Hatch and Blackdown ward, which I'm very proud to represent on Somerset Western Taunton Council. And I'm also the councillor portfolio holder for resources, staffing and finance. And also, which is quite pertinent to what we're talking today, I'm an autism expert by experience for an organisation called Radiant, which is based in Norwich. And that organisation, we conduct research in staff development, autism and neurodiversity issues.
Wow, quite a CV you have there, Ross.
Well,
and that's part of it.
I'm really passionate. I was diagnosed with autism in 2014, Aspergers as well. And I'm really passionate about wanting to increase awareness and support, this lack of support there is for people with neurodiversity issues. And a lot of people have given me an awful lot of support over the last few years for this, and I really want to put something back.
That's amazing, and that's exactly what we're here today to do, to share and spread awareness and help others to understand other people that they might interact with, either in their family, friendship network, or people that they might meet in the supermarket, during these challenging times. So perhaps we could move on and you talk a little bit about your diagnosis, your story, how we kind of got here today.
Well, I was diagnosed in my late 40s, which is becoming quite common for lots of people getting a late diagnosis. I've managed to just about function in my childhood and adult life up to then. I've been a leader of a district council, I've done lots of different jobs, but I always knew there was something. And a period of time in 2013, things came to a head. I became quite ill with stress and anxiety and depression. I'm not afraid to talk about that now. It is difficult to talk about. My family and my work colleagues got me through that, and friends as well. And my GP, thankfully, saw something that would merit a diagnosis referral for autism. I started the long, laborious process of getting a diagnosis, which for me took 18 months and would have taken even longer, but if I hadn't had the great support from my manager at work and my family and my GP, who really pushed for this. And that's a very stressful experience, and it's particularly stressful because it's a bit of a postcode lottery. In some parts of the country, people are waiting up to 2.5 years for an autism diagnosis. And with all that stress that's going on underlying, coming to terms with an potential autism diagnosis, that's really difficult. It's wrong. We should be trying to diagnose people much quicker. I was diagnosed in October 2014, and we're still in the same position. Autism and mental health should no longer be seen as the Cinderella service. And there are 700,000 people in this country who are diagnosed with autism Aspergers, but the true number is far higher, because there are so many people with this condition who as of yet are undiagnosed, who are getting little or no support with their condition at the moment. So I see myself as extremely lucky that I now have a diagnosis.
Yeah, and that's almost thank God that you do have it, because then it helped to answer some questions for you, and help you understand yourself and what's going on. So we've got more people joining. Welcome to all those joining. Thank you for being here and for the love. We see that there's some hearts. Thank you for all of that. So perhaps, Ross, do you have any guidance or tips for people that are seeking a diagnosis, or perhaps a little bit unsure whether perhaps they might have autism, somebody in their family or somebody that they know? One of the people that I shared before this broadcast, when I shared about that we were going to do this, somebody did ask about if there's any support or guidance around getting a diagnosis for someone in their family.
I would strongly advise to talk to your general practitioner about that, and they will give you very good advice about doing that. There's lots of good autism charities out there who can support you and give advice regarding the diagnosis process. The worry I have, it takes for long. So the earlier it is identified, and you can start the diagnosis process. But it is a very long process, and it's extremely stressful. And just actually coming to the position of asking for seeking a diagnosis, that can be extremely stressful as well, coming to terms with that. And I'd like to say, not just for the person who potentially has autism, but for their families and their peer support network and their friends as well. It's also very stressful for them. People often forget the people who are there behind and at the front supporting people with autism, and they're often forgotten, and that's wrong, because they're the ones having to support that person with autism. I know personally, if without the support of my family and my employers and my friends, I wouldn't be able to do this really, and I've been given fantastic support. So people often forget those people and the stress that it causes for somebody trying to support somebody who has autism, and for the autism process itself.
Thank you, that's really useful to know. And Hazel shared a link in the comments, so thank you for that, Hazel, where people could go and have a little read up on some of the signs adults. I'm going to mention a book that before this this broadcast I spoke to a few different people as well as Ross, and another person that I spoke to that was diagnosed in adulthood, I think actually in their 50s, recommended a book called Autism and Aspergers Syndrome in Adults, written by a doctor called Dr. Luke Bearden. And this doctor has written a number of books on neurodiversity, autism, Asperger's, ADHD, that would be useful for those themselves that might be unsure if they have autism, or somebody in their family. So do check out the books by Dr. Luke Bearden, and hopefully we can have a link in the comments as well. Ross, you also wrote a little bit about your story a few years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm very lucky to have the support to write my own story. Last year, I was encouraged to do so when I joined the Radiant Consortium, and I was given fantastic support by Verity Chester and Sam Trummans, who gave me great support and helped me write that article. Difficult to do, but I'm so glad that I've actually done it, outlining my battle to get a diagnosis and some of the stressful things that happened in my life, and how it's changed my life having a diagnosis, because I can understand myself and know why things are happening to me and why I sometimes are anxious or have stress, and how to deal with it and deal with my coping mechanisms. And that article is available to read if anybody wants to read it on Google. And I talk a lot in that article as well regarding the difficulties that people had to try and get me the autism diagnosis, and the stress that I encountered when I was ill beforehand. See, I was in a difficult place, and I look back on that now and to think, how far I've come, and I'm so pleased that I have come out the other side and got the diagnosis. So I know when I'm having a stressful incident or something difficult's happening to me, I know the reasons why, and I can try and deploy coping mechanisms to try and deal with that. So I'm
Yeah.
very lucky that I have the tools, and I realise for people who have much more difficulties than me on the spectrum, that's very, very hard. I'm not being glib about that. I know it's extremely difficult. I'm in the lucky position that I am able to recognise those symptoms and when I'm having a bad moment and what to do about it. But I know for a lot of people, that's either not possible, it's much, much more difficult.
Exactly that, yeah. And so the article, for anybody that would like to read, is in the comments box, and you can search online Ross Henley autism article as well, for anybody that can't access the comments. And Ross, you shared about a really important point. In order for you to get the diagnosis, you did have to get to a sort of rock bottom point where you got very ill, and that was kind of the catalyst to enable you to seek a diagnosis and change your life, really.
Yeah, it has changed my life, and I do look back sometimes, and it was awful. It was pretty horrible for both myself and my family and friends and work colleagues as well, having to see me like that. And I was off work for about 5 or 6 months in 2013 with this. And I do think if I hadn't become so stressed then, would I have even sought a diagnosis? And I might still have been encountering those episodes now and being stressed and having that anxiety. And that quite chills me in a bit, really. So I hated what happened to me in 2013 and being so ill. But that was the catalyst for me getting a diagnosis. But if that hadn't happened, I doubt whether I'd even been diagnosed with it even to this day, or maybe stressful incidents would have occurred later on. It does really, really make you think about that. But I really do use my coping mechanisms now, and I use all sorts of things like, it's trying to find them during my diagnosis and counselling process, finding things that you like, a place that you like to do, and stepping back. And I'm very passionate. I love going to the cinema. I love swimming, which I do every day. And I also use mindfulness. I know during lockdown particularly, routine is often very, very important for people with neurodiversity issues. And the whole break on everything during lockdown, of course, I understand why we had to do that. That was incredibly stressful for the mental health of people with neurodiversity conditions, often simply because the massive change in the routine. And I had to recognise in myself that was going to be difficult. And I started doing mindfulness classes. And there's a wonderful person called Charlotte Newman who lives in the council ward, which I represent, and it's also at Cambridge University. And she does a lot of classes online at her Talking Calm channel on YouTube and on Facebook. And I did some of the mindfulness classes there and even tried some of the meditation classes as well. I can highly recommend them. They're absolutely excellent. There's lots of other support. And we're very, very lucky today. There are lots of different practitioners, lots of different support networks out there online and for free, which people can access to get support from. I'm just using that as an example of one I've used, which is absolutely brilliant. Am I having a stressful incident? I often do one of those classes that Charlotte puts on.
Amazing. And I'm very much an advocate of mindfulness, meditation, and other tools like that. And I think that that's so key. And if there are people watching that are struggling, my invitation would be to seek out different ways to help yourself. I personally go to Tai Chi, and I really love that, and Qigong. They're wonderful, wonderful practices, and just helps me to be in my body rather than in my mind, helps me focus on my breath and just really calms me.
Breathing's really important. That's breathing exercises are really, really important. And often when you do become stressed, you're having a stressful moment, often sadly you're the last person to recognize it, because the people that are around you, family, friends, or people you're talking to, often see the effects of that before you have. And it's always very worrying if you're worried you might have upset somebody or said something, then you haven't even realized you're having an autistic moment.
Exactly that. And what you mentioned about breathing is so key, and something that people can do. So if they've got somebody that they're with that perhaps is displaying symptoms that they might be stressed out because they have a neurodiversity condition, or perhaps not, one thing that people can do is slow down their own breathing. Human beings are empathetic in general, and so we do follow others in body language and also in our breathing. So if we can slow down our breathing, talk slower, talk a more gentle pace, it helps those that are struggling to kind of bring down their own anxieties. So that's something that I thought I'd share. Okay, perhaps now, so you mentioned about Charlotte Newman. Could you tell us again her YouTube channel?
Yeah, it's called Talking Calm, capital T, Talking Calm, that is, yeah, YouTube channel. Yeah, it's just called Talking Calm, and there's a series of links to different videos on different mindfulness and meditation classes. They're very, very good. There are lots of other good practitioners out there, but that one is particularly good. And so it's one that I've used. But I found I used quite a lot of that during lockdown, because lockdown was extremely stressful for people with neurodiversity, partly because the whole routine for everybody had been ripped asunder, and that was very difficult to actually deal with. All the things that you like to do, which you use as coping mechanisms, are not available to you, so you have to find other avenues to get that support as well. Can I also say I'm also very lucky with my employers as well. I work for the DWP as a day job. I'm a trainer, and I have an absolutely excellent management. My manager who's just left, Richard Worrell, and Julie Green, and my whole team, they're absolutely fantastic, the support they've given me, and I feel so lucky to be in a job role that I'm passionate about, and able to talk and deliver training to staff. And I get all the support, from my team as well. I'm very lucky to be on that role and have that support. And going on, when we talk about the employment strategy, which I'm introducing to Somerset West and Taunton Council, I want other people to feel that and have very supportive employers as well. There's some wonderful ones out there. It's not always the case, sadly. And we'll talk about, I know later, about there's a huge gap, and it's a real scandal. The lack of job opportunities for people with neurodiversity conditions, but I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit there.
That's okay, thanks for that. And it is really important that you can share a positive work story, because I'm sure that there are other people that probably have experienced some stigmatism or negativity from their employer and haven't had that sort of embrace, encouragement and support that you have.
I think as well, there is, and I have to say this, I don't want to be controversial. I think there is a lack of understanding about autism, Aspergers, and neurodiversity conditions. They go as far as to say, in a lot of cases, there's a misunderstanding. There are a number of common traits in neurodiversity conditions which some people or lots of people with neurodiversity conditions have, but every person who has a neurodiversity condition is absolutely unique. And people do get sort of pigeonholed and saying, oh, they're autistic, they must have these different traits, and some of them do, but everybody's different, and everybody deserves to be treated as an individual, unique human being. Sadly, in one or two cases, there's some downright prejudice as well. It's quite shocking, really. I've encountered a little bit of low-level stuff when I've posted about autism. I've had some absolutely, the vast majority, 99% of people, fantastically supportive and interested, asking lots of really appropriate questions to find out and build up awareness. You do get the odd random, just appalling comment. You're people who just have most prejudicial views about neurodiversity conditions. I was quite shocked when I encountered that. I was probably being extremely naive by thinking that people didn't hold those views. Thankfully, they're in a very tiny minority, but that still exists, and we need to spread the awareness. We need to build up understanding and explain to people exactly what neurodiversity conditions are, and also increase the awareness, increase the support that's out there.
So important and so true. And I think a real key point that I'd like to highlight from what you just said now, and that's come up a number of times when I was preparing for this, is that every person is different, and every person with a neurodiversity condition is different. And simply, if we draw it back to its bare bones, neurodiversity simply means somebody thinks differently.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a really great point to talk about. As human beings, we are all different, and and yet we have common threads. We're all human beings. If you cut our skin, we'll bleed. But I think that's really useful for those watching. For me personally, knowing that whenever I say something, what I say and what the other person hears are different, not
Yeah.
always the same. And what we think and what others think, it's different. So knowing that can help you to perhaps have a little bit more compassion and understanding about the person that you're interacting with, whether they have a neurodiverse condition or not.
I didn't realise as well, and I went did some counselling sessions, joint counselling sessions, and some of it was quite harrowing because I was dealing and working with, other people who had, really harrowing quite stories to tell as well. And one of the other things we talked about, and I didn't realise this at all, that for instance, if you have a neurodiversity condition, you have autism Aspergers, the interest that you have, that you are really excited and passionate about, you are more into and more excited about than people who don't have neurodiversity. And I suddenly started thinking, wow, I'm very, very lucky. Other people who haven't got autism aren't getting the interest and passion out of an interest that perhaps I am. And lots of people with neurodiversity have the most incredible skills, and they're very skillful at a whole wide range of things. And they can bring so much talent to different organizations and different employers if some of them they're only given the chance.
Very much so, and I think that that's really, really important to mention. I know in our prep we had a little look online about famous people with autism, and Anthony Hopkins came up, and a few other names. So maybe somebody that's supporting in the comments can share some of those names, but some really big names, in the sort of film industry, production sort of. And
lots of people with autism are extremely creative people. I can't say I'm creative or not, but lots of people with autism Aspergers are extremely creative. And we talked yesterday, used Anthony Hopkins as an example. Would he be the great, fantastic actor he is if he didn't have autism and Aspergers? Because maybe that's part of his creative part of his body.
Exactly that, and really, everybody has something different that they bring, and those with neurodiverse conditions bring something that's completely different, and perhaps a little bit, maybe more intense, but that gives it that real buzz. Anthony Hopkins, some of his roles have been
very intense.
Very intense, but equally gripping. And without that, you wouldn't be there on the edge of your seat. I know, as a younger woman, I loved sort of Silence of the Lambs.
I was just thinking the same. It's one of the iconic film character roles in the history of cinema. You think cinema's been going on for 100 years, and that is one of the most iconic roles. You mentioned Anthony Hopkins' Silence of the Lambs, and you're there, and everybody knows that role, don't they? Even if people haven't seen the film.
Yeah. Now, personally, I'm a bit sensitive to watch that and really feel it, because I've become more sensitive as I've kind of got older and done more personal work and delving, and perhaps that's something also to mention. Some people with neurodiverse conditions are particularly sensitive and will feel things more deeply than others, and then have an adverse reaction. So, for example, some people with neurodiverse conditions, if they're in a busy shopping centre and it's very noisy and there's lots of stimulus, they may find that very intense, and then they might become intense. And that there's a reason for that, because it's when we, as every person, we hear things at a certain level, and some people will hear things more intensely. So like the volumes whacked up massively. And then, of course, if we all have a level where it becomes too much.
But I have an example of that. When I was a child, I used to drive my parents to distraction if we ever went on a plane anywhere. Back in the days where you didn't have a necessarily an air bridge and you had to walk across the tarmac and the old retro ways and up the steps. And I'd start putting cotton wool in my ears because of the sound of the engines. And my parents were like, what's he doing? Highly embarrassed by my behaviours. And I tried to explain to them that I found the noise so absolutely intense to the point it was absolutely frightening. I was absolutely fine when I was on the plane. I'm lucky I didn't have a fear of flying. But just that sound of the engines revving, I found so intense. And I didn't think anything of it there. And my parents probably thought it was some kind of bizarre behavior. I don't know. But now I'm thinking back, when I read about people with neurodiversity, about sometimes have extreme, they can have different levels of hearing. And sometimes I get stressed in crowds. Sometimes I don't. It depends, you know, and it's quite random. I have had those sort of episodes where I've had to check back, and I've become extremely stressed where I've been in sort of very crowded situations.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, thank you for that example. It's really useful to know. And now you can sort of explain that. And there will be people that perhaps watching that have children or family members that behave in a certain way and they don't understand it. And that could be one of the reasons why. So Hazel has kindly put in the comments lots of famous people with autism, and there are some really big names, and so yeah.
We got them.
So we've got Dan Aykroyd, an actor, and then there's Tim Burton, a very infamous film director.
Look at the creativity in his movies as well. You know, the imagination, that's incredible.
Exactly. There is Lewis Carroll, Susan Boyle, perhaps some people that might have been aware of that, and Bill Gates. You know, there's quite a lot of Albert Einstein. So people that have really kind of strived in maths and physics sometimes are often on the neurodiverse spectrum, and of course we've got the famous Dustin Hoffman film portrayed there. So yeah, it feels like a really good time to move on and go through the presentation that you wonderfully prepared. So I am going to play with the technology, share my
So this worked out when
screen.
we did it yesterday. We practiced this, didn't we? So it's fine.
Yeah, right. Let's see how we can do this. Okay. Oops. Okay, so
We're here. That's good.
we are here. First slide. Please, share with us a bit about exactly what neurodiversity is, Ross.
Okay, so neurodiversity refers to the different ways the brain can work and interpret information. Highlights that people naturally think about things differently. We have different interests and motivations, all of us do, and we are naturally better at some things and not so good at other. Poor is the wrong word, but not so good at other things. Most people are neurotypical, meaning that the brain functions and process information in the way that society expects. However, it's estimated that 1 in 7 people, that's an incredible figure, more than 15% of people in the United Kingdom are neurodivergent. That means that the brain functions and learning and process information differently than people who are neurotypical.
That's a whopping figure, isn't it?
15%. Well, I talked about with autism, we have 700,000 approximately who are diagnosed. That recommends just over 1% of the adult population, with the population of the United Kingdom. We know there are far more undiagnosed out there, but 1 in 7 of us, 15% of the people in the country have that. So we're probably talking about 10 million people who are neurodivergent. That's an astonishing figure. And there's still so much more that we need to do to raise awareness of that. For 10 million people in the country, that's incredible, isn't it?
It is phenomenal, and I think also a really key thing to mention that's just come to mind is that it affects people differently across the sexes. So neurodiverse conditions will have different presenting factors in women, men, and potentially also in those in the my brain has gone to sleep. I can think of the word.
Yeah, and that touches on a point that there is an urban
community
myth that only men can be autistic or have Asperger's, and probably the majority, more than 50%, are. But there are a lot of women as well who have autism Asperger's. We mustn't forget that there are lots. It's not just a man thing. It's lots of women also have neurodiversity conditions and autism Asperger's as well, and an increasing number of people who are female are being diagnosed as well. But some people
exactly
think it's a man thing.
Yeah, and of course also the LGBTQ, have
Yeah,
I got the letters in there, community as well. So there was a wonderful website that I came across, which I haven't got to hand, which I will share in the comments, which talks about autism and Aspergers in women and the different signs and symptoms. And there's a blog, so I'll share that in the comments after
good.
this. Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Okay, so this gives you an idea of some of the different neurodiversity conditions. Often people ask, and they certainly ask me, give some examples of neurodiversity. Of course, I've been talking about autism and Asperger's a lot today because those are the two conditions I have, but they are by no means the only types of neurodiversity conditions that are out there. We also have ADHD, we have dyslexia, epilepsy, we have dyspraxia, intellectual disabilities, Tourette's and tic disorders, and development language issues as well. Lots and lots of different issues. Neurodivergence does include a range of conditions, including attention deficit disorders, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and as we talked about, 700,000 diagnosed with autism Asperger's in the country at the moment. And the number of individuals in the UK that have dyslexia, for instance, is around 10%. You know, 4% at the severe end of the dyslexia continuum. 10% of people in the country have dyslexia. That's an astonishing figure, I think.
Very much, and I think it's really important to share that written word is quite a modern thing. You know,
it is, and I wonder if I have that one as well. I mean, because I've written this one article, I'm halfway through writing 2 further articles as well, but I couldn't ever put out an article without it getting proofread or checked over for grammar or content and everything, because I have the ideas and I think the imagination to write these articles, and I have an extremely good memory, but I have to get anything that I put out in my council work as well. I have to get sort of proofread as well. I do regular newsletters to the villages I represent, and there's a fantastic people in the different villages I represent who very kindly come forward and actually proofread these articles for me before they go out. And I wouldn't be able to function as a counsellor without the great support I've had from them and helping me communicate what I'm doing in my job roles. I'm very, very lucky the people who support me. I get support from lots of my constituents as well. I feel very grateful for that.
amazing.
So what I want to
You've
do
got a great team there.
Well, I have. I'm very, very lucky with the support network that I have. What I wanted to do, I think I'm in a unique position. I'm the executive council for staffing and resources, and I wanted to put something back. I want Somerset Western Taunton, the council I'm on, to be an absolute exemplar council for supporting people with neurodiversity issues. And we've got this new policy. It's been implemented. We've got working groups of staff looking at it. And I want this rolled out across the local government association as well. I want to challenge them as well to do more. Some councils are good, some councils need to do more. And I think here is a template councils can build upon and actually introduce much better neurodiversity support in their own councils as well. And I'm already talking to the local government association and other councils as well. I've been talking to my friend, a lot of support from a council called Sarah Chung Johnson in South Cambridgeshire Council, who given me an awful lot of encouragement both to write my article and my story, and also autism issues as well. And she's very interested in talking to this to South Cambridgeshire Council as well. So as part of our commitment as Somerset Western Taunton to build a diverse and inclusive workforce for our staff, customers and partners who work with the council need to focus on neurodiversity and support those individuals who have specific needs. And we want collectively as a council, we are now, raising awareness amongst staff to be able to recognise and support colleagues, customers, members and partners, making our working community more inclusive. We've already had one meeting of 15 members of staff right across the organisation, across Somerset Western Taunton Council, who've come forward and they're working on various different work streams. They're looking at the interview process, they're looking at the job application process, and also very importantly, looking at how as a council we support staff who have neurodiversity issues and actually get them the empathetic support from their line managers and their support from their working colleagues as well.
That's amazing, and how key that is, you know, for people to have some recognition and some inclusivity. And one of the things that I loved, I remember before we'd ever had a conversation, but when I just seen a post of yours on Facebook, The pre-application stage, you're even looking to, have inclusivity there. So people, before they even apply, feel that their needs will be looked at, and it won't just be a standard one-size-fits-all application process.
And I think we talk about that on the next slide, don't we? And I think it's
let's move on. Here we go.
Yeah, and we've registered as a disability committed employer, you know, and I think that's the right thing to do. And we aim for a focused action plan to achieve accreditation as a disability confident employer. I think we've done that now. And as I said, we've set up this working group consisting of staff right across the organisation who either have neurodivergent challenges themselves or support friends and family who do. And that group is already, you know, in this building. I'm sat in Dean House now, and a lot of the staff are working at home. They've done a fantastic job stepping up to the plate working from home, and I know that's been very challenging as well. They're shaping our plans and testing some of our training, our guidance, our management toolkits before they're rolled out. And I'm really, really excited when I had that first meeting with the staff and connected with them and the passion that they have to work on this and actually implement this plan. Do we go on to the next slide?
We go.
So, what we want to do is look at the best action plan, the best practice from autism charities and neurodiversity partnerships, draft guidance for managers and supporting neurodivergent employees in the workplace. For instance, getting managers to clarify the expectations of the job, providing appropriate training and monitoring, making sure instructions are concise and specific. That's absolutely critical for a member of staff who has neurodiversity. Ensure that the work environment is well structured, that their performance is regularly reviewed, and in a sensitive way, with direct sensitive feedback, and provide reassurance in stressful situations. Now, I'm incredibly lucky. Some of the things that I'm able to bring to this plan, I've learned from my own employer, my own team and my managers, incredibly supportive when I came onto their team 18 months ago to becoming a staff trainer. And I have all the things I've just listed there as the top tips for the way that management supports staff. I'm actually very lucky to have, and I know a lot of people don't have that. And we want this council to take that on board and be an exemplar employer on this, and we're going to be. So we want to develop risk assessment process so it's reasonable adjustments can be made. Examine the recruitment process to increase inclusivity. And we very briefly talked about that as well. Lots of people who have neurodiversity conditions don't ever apply for jobs, which they could quite easily do and perform excellently, because sometimes they're put off by just even keywords in the job spec or the job application form. Things like excellent communication skills, good team player. They're often included in job applications as default skills, even though they're not necessary. And many people, for instance, who are autistic or have neurodiversity, may not even apply for these jobs demanding these attributes, which could mean that suitable and excellent applicants may not even get to the interview stage. They might not even apply for the job because they're put off by words in the job spec. I've seen that myself. There are some roles which I have been quite interested in the past and didn't apply for because I was put off by keywords that were used in the job application process or the job spec. I might not have been able to have done that job, but I do have some experience in that as well. And look at the interview process as well. That's an absolute minefield, the interview process, which can be so stressful for people with neurodiversity conditions. We want to see a process where you could provide interview questions in advance, provide clear and concise written and visual information about the interview, giving clear directions and maps for the interview location, providing quiet and calm spaces for the candidates as well, and avoid those general sort of questions. Tell me about yourself, which, some of the different things that people with autism and neurodiversity might find very, very stressful. Hypothetical questions that are often used in job interviews to often put off people with these conditions. And I think we need a radical overhaul, not just in councils, but also in the public sector as well. In fact, in the private sector, there's so much more that we can do to support people with neurodiversity conditions, both in the workplace, but as 89% of people who have autism do not work. That is an absolute disgrace. It's a shocking figure. And only 7% of people with Autism Aspergers even do part-time work. And lots of people who aren't working, have those conditions, could perform lots of different job roles and can perform in a very good way. And lots of employers, I want to say, sorry, I'm talking too much, but I wanted to say, are
So
very,
good.
very good about supporting staff. But the thing is, unless you have in place an appropriate structure in terms of the job application process and the interview process, you're not going to be able to employ many people who have those conditions, because they'll either be put off or stressed out by the whole process and the paraphernalia of applying for that job. So you'll have a very small people to give this appropriate process. So I want us to actually be in a place where we make it much easier to employ people who have these conditions. And I think
Sounds
that's something which
amazing.
employers right across the country can take note from. To me, it's about, there are barriers still out there. I want to use my position and to bring those barriers absolutely crashing down. I want to increase awareness of autism and Aspergers and neurodiversity issues and conditions, and do something positive to actually increase support for people in the workplace, in my council role, and also outside of my council role. In fact, use my council role to actually increase awareness of autism and awareness issues and neurodiversity condition issues right throughout society as well. There's so much more that we can do. Yes, it's improved, but we're on a very long journey, and there's a long, long way to go, and I want to be part of that.
Amazing. And I think that that's so key. You know, you talked about things such as people not even applying, and I very much personally feel that the application and interview process across many different companies, organisation, public, private, voluntary sector, is very antiquated. It's, you know, application form, CV, interview process, it's very kind of stilted, and it's not diverse and inclusive. So this project sounds so exciting and really groundbreaking.
And it's got cross-party support, it's got cross-councillor support, it's got supported by a senior. I've had fantastic support from Federica Smith-Roberts, my council leader, and James Hassett, our council chief executive, and the management team who supported us in actually introducing this policy. I wouldn't be on the council if it wasn't for Federica. I lost my seat by 4 votes in 2015. Really difficult experience, but that's the electoral politics that you put yourself up for, and that's life. And coming back on a by-election, poor Federica was my agent in a by-election in December 2016 in the Blackdown ward, and she nursed me through that process and got me through it, because I found that very stressful standing in a by-election, and we had a fantastic result with a record-breaking swing to get me elected, and I just feel so lucky to represent the Blackdown Hills and my areas, other areas I represent on the council as well, because there's so many people who've been so kind to me in my council ward, and I feel a lot of them are personal friends now, because I feel really part of their community, and I feel very passionate about supporting them.
Amazing, amazing. And I'm sure that there will be families and constituents in your wards which, you know, experience some of this, and that can be part of the change and help to influence these new groundbreaking policies. So I feel it's useful for us now, as we're coming close to the end, to throw it out there. If anyone's got any questions that they would like to ask either Ross or myself, please do put them in the comments box. Any questions that are shared after the live, we will come back to. However, it won't be such a quick response. So yeah, if there's anyone watching that would like to ask anything, share any feedback, please do. Thank you. That's amazing what you're doing, and you know, very much support you.
It's very kind. I was very stressful. I've done a lot of media stuff in the past, and I do enjoy it, but I do like talking. Probably one of my faults. But I was really nervous about coming on here this morning, because it's quite personal, talking about some of the personal stuff and what we're doing with autism. And because I care so deeply and passionately about this agenda, I felt more nervous than I would normally, because it's something I truly believe in and want to succeed and improve things for lots and lots of people who are very unhappy. There's lots of people who are really unhappy, and we need to give them a lot of support, more support.
Thank you, that's great. So there are a couple of comments that's come. Margaret has shared that she went on a one-day autism awareness course with a lady called Ali Ward, and she's put a website in there, autismsomerset.org. So thank you for that. I'm sure it will be useful to somebody.
And it is, and that's really good. And I said I use Charlotte as an example, but there are lots and lots of other practitioners out there, lots more support. I mean, there's a lot of rubbish on the internet, isn't there? But there's so much good stuff out there as well. And there are so many people providing all sorts of support, often for free, that you can access online on YouTube or on Facebook, on other platforms as well, which are giving people an awful lot of people a lot of support with this agenda. So that's one thing that has improved.
Amazing. Somebody else has asked, does dyscalculia, I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, come into your plans? So that's, I believe, a neurodiverse condition related to mathematics. I've just had to look it up because I didn't know it.
Yeah, that's one I'm not particularly aware of, and I'm certainly not an expert on. In fact, again, one thing I'm liking about it is I'm learning things myself, and I wasn't aware of that. So if somebody like to share the details of me of that, I'd be fascinated to find out more about it and see if there's something we could look at when we talk about our future plans. I'd like to know more about that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing, Hazel. Russell has asked, good books on autism. So do you have any books that have been useful to you, Ross?
Well, I mean, I'm obviously going to put a plug in for Radiant, the Radiant Consortium. There's an awful lot of advice and case studies that they have done on Radiant, have there on Twitter, and there's lots of if you Google Verity Chester and Sam Tremaines, they've done a lot of fantastic work on raising on these different issues. They've got a lot of pamphlets and things that you can read, which are really, really good. But there are other people as well. I've been wading through some of the stuff that they've been working on the last couple of years. I find it absolutely fascinating, some of the research that they've absolutely been doing as well. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there behind paywalls, but there's a lot of free stuff out there that people can read as well. It's probably too many to mention, I could say specifically, but have a look through Google, have a browse through there, and there's lots of good stuff out there.
Amazing, thank you. So I'll put some of that in the comments, and really useful to share those, because I think it is getting the information out there. A book that came into my awareness when I was doing research was Autism and Aspergers Syndrome in Adults by Dr. Luke Bearden, mentioned earlier, and there's some other titles as well by the same author that will help people with children with autism and Asperger's, as well as, I believe he's written some books on ADHD, so check out that author. So you mentioned the Radium Consortium. So
yeah, Consortium, yeah.
In the comments.
I'm not just promoting that because that's a group I'm linked to, but they are very, very good. But there's lots of other good publications out there as well. And I'm still learning. I'm still learning. 6 years actually this month I was diagnosed. I'm learning every day more about my own condition and about how neurodiversity affects other people as well. It's a lifelong learning journey. You never stop learning on it.
Amazing. And I very much feel that every day is like a school day, not in there, but an opportunity for us to learn. When we stop learning, we may as well be dead.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Last few moments, and then we're going to wrap this up. We've covered a lot of information today. Thank you so much. And do you welcome people getting in contact, individuals or organisations?
More than happy to do that. I mean, a lot of people have already engaged me in some of my various Facebook posts I put on about autism and Asperger's. And people can Google me and they can or Facebook message me. I'd be delighted to hear from people and hear about their experiences as well. So yeah, I'd love to engage. I love to talk to people. It's the bit of the council job that I enjoy the best, going out there, engaging with people, trying to support them, meeting real people, and talking to people about autism and Asperger's and neurodiversity would be I'd love to do as well. So I'm more than happy to engage with people, because I learn something from it as well. You know, I'm not the font of all knowledge and everything, but I know I will learn things as well. And
that's so key. And hearing other stories, everyone has their own story, and that needs to be shared. So thank you so much, Ross.
Thank you so much for having me. You can't believe how nervous I was, but not normally with this. I was incredibly nervous this morning.
Well, it didn't show, so you've done amazingly, and thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All those that have watched live and on the replay, we appreciate you being here. We're all helping to change the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about this platform and this new policy, which I think is groundbreaking. It's Somerset Western Taunton Council. It's going to be a groundbreaking council for this. And I know other councils are looking at it. And thank you so much for giving a chance for me to come on, explain to lots and lots of people something positive. You know, there's so much negativity in, you know, politics and local government and national government. Here's something I think really, really positive, and I really want to shout from the rooftops.
Let's do it. Thank you, Ross. All right, bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me. Lovely to talk to everybody. Bye.
Bye.